And to me, that's actually a bigger change than the change to the essay questions. The essay questions definitely reflect the change in criteria. And the reason I say I think it's bigger.
Good, but is there a specific problem that you solved in a business-like structure and showed leadership in undertaking the solution to that?
It's all about mitigating bias and prejudice, intercultural dialogue, it's addressing inequity. There's a lot in there that can be really meaty, and an applicant has to think about how they've contributed to those areas.
Hey MBA hopefuls, we are live on air with MBA Waves talking all things business and education. Please give us a like and subscribe because it helps us continue to create all the free MBA Waves content. Today on episode 142, we're talking about some MBA essays, so timely because there have been some big changes to some of the MBA essays for your coveted M7 programs. We're going to be dissecting the HBS essays for 2024-2025 application cycle, and of course, leave you with some key tips to make your story shine. This week, I'm your host, Kritika, joined by my co-host, Eric and Vara. We are also joined by special guests and colleagues, Linda Abraham, co-founder and first president of AGAC, and founder of Accepted.com, Dr. Marlena of Athena Mentor, Faisal Khan of MBA Prep School. To quickly summarize the changes that have been made to the HBS essays, from a 900-word essay of what more can you tell us to 3 distinct essays, there's been quite a change, and this is a change in a decade. So I'm going to start with Linda first and go around the room and ask about, are you guys in favor of these changes?
Well, Harvard didn't ask for my vote, so, but I actually, well, I'm going to get to your question. I want to point out, though, that in addition to changes in the essays, the criteria have changed. The what are we looking for have changed, or has changed. And to me, that's actually a bigger change than the change to the essay questions. The essay questions definitely reflect the change in criteria. The reason I say I think it's bigger is because it should reflect what goes into the application, the entire application, not just the essays. The essays are very much, are dealing with a new criteria. But I think applicants should keep that in mind. In terms of whether I'm in favor of it, I actually like the old question. I like the "what more do you want us to know" question. I liked it for a variety of reasons. One, I think that should be in the back of every applicant's mind whenever they're answering questions. Yes, you have to answer the question posed, but what do you want the school to know about you? This is your opportunity to tell them your story in response to their questions. So I think that question should be there, even if it's not explicit. And it shouldn't just be there with Harvard, it should be there with any school they're applying to. The second point, in terms of why I actually like the old question more, again, not that it matters too much, is I felt it gave the applicant more opportunity to express individuality than these questions. I think it was also unique to Harvard, and I think that would have been better for Harvard. But again, it didn't ask for my opinion or vote. And then the third reason is I think that these questions are so defined, so constrained. We say, well, Harvard's going to get what it wants, but I think it's just going to see less individuality in the applicants.
So taking that directness, I know, Dr. Marlena, you deal with a lot of college applicants as well. Do you think that these 3 prompts would have been better suited for college application more than an MBA application?
I agree with Linda that there is something to be said to the depth of self-understanding and self-examination that's required to answer a larger question. However, I think that such a large question, who are you? It carries the danger that applicants will feel like a deer caught in the headlights. It's a really big question. And I think the advantage of these questions is that it walks the applicant through how to write the application. And I think a lot of applicants will appreciate that no matter how old they are.
Thanks, Marlena. And that brought up another point of how these changes have happened after quite a long time. And, probably I'm going to pick Faisal for this to say, like, do you think it's reflective of the kind of MBA applicants we're seeing now?
Yeah, I think so. And also to pick up on what both Linda and Marlena mentioned, I had grown to love the old essay question, but I understand I feel I understand why Harvard did some of this. There's also, they're trying, I feel, to capture the element of diversity in light of all of the Supreme Court rulings in the US, where schools are not quite able to take certain backgrounds into consideration during application decisions. And I sense that they're trying to weave that into some of the MBA essays, especially the first one, this business-minded essay reflecting on your experience and how that's influenced your career choices and aspirations. I think that's a clear signal that they want you to talk about the struggles that you've overcome and how your background has influenced this on your journey. So in that sense, Ritik, I do think it's reflective of the type of student that HBS wants to see, leaders who are able to corral their collective experiences getting to this point and say, how is that going to influence how you're going to lead into the future? So it'll take me some time to digest this change, as it will for everyone in the community. But I like the structure that these questions are providing, and it'll be interesting to see how candidates begin to tackle them.
Ritika, may I respond to the structure of the questions
Absolutely.
as well as the content? I'm sure we'll discuss the content. But the first two questions are like a three-step waltz. In alignment with what Faisal said, they ask about something that happened in the past, an experience, not a thing, not a title. And then how did that affect your present? And implies or asks about the person you will become in the future. That's also a very classic storytelling formula, a beginning, a middle, and an end. I think this will help save some students from thinking that, oh, they're asking me to name a great accomplishment in my past, which, by the way, should be on your CV, not really just as naming it in these questions, but it encourages storytelling. And in that sense, I think it does encourage creativity.
Any other comments about this?
Yeah, it's a really interesting take on them. Past, present, future is a great way to structure any narrative, whether it's an essay, a story, or whatever.
And beginning, middle, and end, as you said as well.
Pardon me?
Beginning, middle, and an end as well.
Yeah. I think that all of them look at experiences. They're all asking for you to mention one or two experiences. They talk in plural, but the word limits, I think, would make it really difficult to mention much more than two, just, with some thought. And, I think the structure that Marlena mentioned is an excellent one.
Well, Linda, while I have you on the mic, breaking it down, how would we want applicants to approach the business-minded essay?
Okay. Well, first of all, any essay, in my opinion, has to be looked at in context of the entire application. So you don't want, and I think Marlena alluded to this a minute ago, you don't want to be repeating the same great achievement over and over again, or anything over and over again. You want the essays to bring out different aspects of your experience and your background. And as Faisal said, I think diversity, and if you look at the criteria that Harvard posted this cycle, it mentions diversity several times. So that's clearly one of the things that they're looking for. I think there's two ways you could structure your answer to this. One is, what was the experience that influenced you? How has it shaped your career goals? And they're not looking for short-term career goals. They're looking for your aspirations, for the impact that you want to have. Harvard is about leadership and impact. So don't just focus on that post. Don't even talk about the post-MBA job. It's what change do you want to affect? What change do you want to lead? What do you want to accomplish in a greater sense, not just in getting that first job? That's one way to structure it. The other way to structure it is to start with the again, I'm sure there are more, but these are the two that come to my mind. To start with the achievement of your aspiration, and then what was the genesis of that aspiration? What experience influenced you? How has it shaped you? And then you have the achievement already foreseen. So those are a couple of ways to structure your response.
Faisal, can I ask you the same question?
Yeah, I think Linda provides a really good structure. And if you're thinking about answering the business-minded essay, remember, Harvard is looking to learn from you. They want to have individuals that will thrive in that case discussion in a classroom. And what's happening in a case discussion? Your peers are looking to learn from everything that you say. Everything has to have an impact. It has to be short, sweet, meaningful. So you want to always have a lens of how am I going to tell Harvard something that they don't already know? So as you're considering, again, I know we're focused on this first essay, the business-minded question, think about what additional incremental information that would be really interesting that you can impart to the admissions committee by virtue of this question. It's challenging. It's only 300 words. You're going to be concluding it by the time you even begin getting into it, but you still have to try.
Marlena, anything to add about the business-minded essay?
Well, in line with what Faisal said, a 350-word limit lets Harvard Business School know whether you can get to the point. 300, sorry, whether you can get to the point. And this would be useful in a curriculum that relies on class discussion too, because you don't want people rambling.
No.
I think which was your biggest concern with the previous essays?
Yeah, but that kind of goes to my point. By giving the word limits, they're not really seeing who can be succinct. When there was no limit, they saw who could be succinct and who wasn't.
That's interesting. I have a question based on all the things that you're saying. I mean, we're talking about what's there, but I'm curious about what's not there and how you might want to integrate something that you felt was really impactful in previous years' essays or in either other schools' essays that you think is important. Is there anything that you feel that you're going to advise students to include that aren't specifically stated they're being asked for?
That's a really good question, Bara. I'm going to jump in and want to hear from the other panelists as well. I think one of the questions that I'm a big fan of is Stanford's "What Matters Most to You?" And previously with Harvard's open-ended question, there was a way to weave that in, and there's a little less opportunity to do that in this new format. But I still encourage applicants to see if they can somehow do so, because that really helps set the groundwork for why the Harvard admissions officer should consider you as a valuable addition to their future class.
I think it forces people to concentrate on an example, max 2, as Linda said, instead of saying, well, what matters to me is world peace. And good, but is there a specific problem that you solved in a business-like structure and showed leadership in undertaking the solution to that? And just to show that I'm not exaggerating, I really do remember a teenage applicant who, when asked a similar question, told me with excitement about a Model United Nations meeting at which her cohort had unanimously voted to end poverty. And I said, and no one voted for poverty? So, like, come on. So I think that the structure of the current essays really force people to give a tight example. And that will come into the discussion, I'm sure, when we turn to AI.
Oh yeah, Marlena, since I know you're so into the world of the Ivy Leagues at different levels of education, in the undergrad years and so forth, this return of Harvard to back to this question, it's been a very long time since they asked this question versus the open-ended. Do you think there's some kind of parallel to the return to requiring testing? There was a while that test waivers were becoming a thing. Standardized testing has been under the microscope for decades. And with COVID, it was even more of a push to make more flexibility. But you've spoken about the results of that before in your articles in Forbes and so forth. And like, is there a parallel, you think, this return to a traditional brass tacks kind of essay along with the testing?
I think that in both cases, for college applications and for highly selective MBA applications, the college or university or business program wants to dissuade people from thinking this is a contest of accomplishments that can be listed, and more about character and what you can contribute to the class and what you aspire to become. They want to know more about you as a person and your ability to follow through on commitment, no matter what obstacles might lie in your path. And now I'll answer your question in a very controversial way, Eric, with a view to which I myself might not even subscribe, and it's this. The SAT was originally billed as an aptitude test, not a content test. And it could be said that it still is, that it examines ability to answer questions in a logical manner, not on the basis of facts that you may or may not have memorized.
Right.
The other thing about the SAT when it first came out, at least according to the book The Chosen, which is a history of Ivy League admissions, is that it came into more common use after World War II, largely in response to the quotas that limited Jewish admission to the Ivy Leagues. And it was an attempt to even things out and make it more of a meritocracy, which is ironic given the criticism of it in the last, 25, 30 years.
And yet some of the defense of it.
Right. And this point, that's why Dartmouth has gone back to it. I think MIT has gone back to it for those reasons also. But it is ironic, given the criticism of it, how it came into more common usage.
Interesting.
Well, the test also changed, right?
Pardon me, Barb?
The test also changed over time. So like an original question might have been like, what is a saucer? And certain groups of people might not know what a saucer was. They might have known it as a flying saucer, not the thing that you put under a teacup, right? And so they had to change that. The doctors were not all men, right?
Right.
Over time.
Right.
So the test has really gone through a lot of changes and has gone through a big change recently too. So
going back to your question, Bear, about what's not stated explicitly in the essay questions, and I think this relates to what Marlena was talking about, was it's not asking explicitly for challenges overcome or diversity elements or disadvantaged background or anything of the kind. But I think it's kind of implicit in the growth-oriented essay question that's what they're looking for. And again, I think if you're looking at the criteria that would support it. The other thing that I think is missing is from the business-minded essay, and that is a definition of business. Clearly, not-for-profit groups are included in businesses, as are governmental groups. A lot of businesses would say that government isn't a business, but so that's kind of an interesting question also, and it's not stated explicitly that I could find on the website anywhere.
I'm glad that Linda brought up the fact that the past experiences, it is left up to the candidate to decide whether that experience is positive or negative. You have a choice.
A lot of times they're both.
Yep. Learning from your failures.
To me, the business-minded essay I thought was looking more towards somebody going into a business. So they were possibly not worried too much about where they were coming from, but more about where they were headed towards.
I think it's both, Kritika. I mean, they ask, please reflect on how your experiences have influenced your career choices and aspirations and the impact you will have. So it wants both in 300 words.
Yeah, one thing I'd add is don't forget the impact you will have, right?
Yeah.
We were talking about this earlier. Harvard wants to admit individuals that are going to have an impact on the world, and so as future business leaders. So talk about what changes you will bring about. It's not just, I want to first in the short term do this after my MBA, then in the long term go on and do that. What are you changing? What impact are you having? If you want to go into fashion, are you going to impact the way fashion is perceived in emerging markets and underrepresented communities? If you're going into clean tech, I'm making things up, what impact are you going to have? Is there something that's underserved that you want to change, right? So make sure that the impact portion doesn't get lost.
Do you see yourself changing consulting to a subscription model?
Yeah, that's a great one.
I'm not suggesting it. I'm just throwing something out. Or flat rate services, or, what do you see? Some new technology. How are you going to use AI?
Mm-hmm.
But again, I certainly don't believe it's at all about the short-term goal.
Did anyone notice the word "and"? Businesses, organizations, and communities. It's not or.
It's true. But again, it's only 300 words, so you might want to focus.
Right.
So moving on to the next one. So I think all of us are in the business of getting future leaders. How do we feel about tackling the leadership essay? Marlena, do you want to take this first?
Well, I think that it seems like we hope you've gotten the business part off your chest in essay number 1. So you are now free to do something a little broader in answering the leadership question. Again, it's not a title, and it gives people an opportunity to bring in something outside of their presumably corporate life. You could discuss your life in the military. You could discuss being a Girl Scout leader, anything, your religious organization, your atheist organization. So I think it is a chance to branch out and add 3-dimensionality to the first business-minded essay prompt.
And as always with leadership, you want to talk about your impact over your title, right? First of all, they can see your title on your CV and your LinkedIn. Second of all, this is storytelling time. This is story time, all about you. Talk about the impact you've had that's not necessarily visible on your essays. Sorry, Faisal, you were going to say something.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to de-stress applicants that are viewing this. There's no wrong answer. Honestly, the question is saying, what kind of leader do you want to become? So there's many different ways to answer this, but what I take away from this is tell Harvard a little bit about your leadership philosophy and what it is that maybe gaps, and that's the type of leader that you want to become. I want to become a leader that can handle change. I want to become a leader who can bring diverse stakeholders together. Because why? And then go into that. So talk a little bit about your leadership philosophy.
I think the other thing that this question is asking is to show how you're a leader who empowers others in your leadership style. It's not command and control. Eric, I think you said and I once heard a speaker talking, are you leading by virtue of status or by virtue of stature? It's stature that you want.
Exactly. Guys, the questions come in from the audience. Whoever wants to take this is from Abhimanyu Sharma, who says, hey, everyone, I have a question. Can we add our past story in the essays?
Yes.
You want to
Yes,
elaborate?
I think the questions are asking for it.
Yeah.
Yes.
We want proof.
Yeah, they want experiences. They're asking for experiences. Those would be those would be the stories that you can tell.
But it can't be a self-contained past essay. It has to be past as it shaped the present and points toward the future.
Definitely.
Yeah, and Marlena, that's an important point, because every question that Harvard has is pointing to the future. The business-minded essay is asking the impact you will have. The leadership-focused essay is what kind of leader do you want to become? And the growth-oriented essay was, well, that's all about growth. So
right, it's implicit.
It's implicit. So it's okay to talk of your past, but with a lens to the future.
Right. Contextualize with the past. Or if you're talking about an experience that taught you something, then yes. But yeah, it's definitely pointing towards the future, as you clearly pointed out. I think it's public knowledge that the leadership at Harvard has changed, and Harvard Business School has changed. And maybe with the new people in charge, they were like, I'm not so sure if I'm satisfied with the kind of essays we got when we didn't specify what we wanted. So I feel like this breakdown into 3 questions is essentially what maybe I'm postulating that they were hoping for by this open-ended question, that they would have these 3 main areas covered. And perhaps it's the responses they got were a little bit off the mark, and they're giving more guidance. But maybe this is what they always wanted.
So Faisal, would you say that the growth-oriented essay is sort of like the new kid on the block, allowing for more creativity?
I think so, Bara. I absolutely think so, because whereas the others are a little bit more structured about leadership, the impact on a business, here it's about curiosity. And so really, this is where you can get a little creative appropriately. But this is, again, an area where Harvard is looking to learn from you. So think about your passions, think about your areas of expertise, and how can you explain those to Harvard in the context of the question they're asking. Share an example of how you've demonstrated curiosity. So think about how you've grown, and through your passions, how has that impacted your development, and where do you want to take this into the future? So I definitely think this is where you can exercise creativity. Again, 250 words, it's not going to be long, but you do want to tell Harvard about this outside of work component if one exists in your background.
What do you anticipate as examples, Faisal?
This could be if you have been curious about how things work and have then gone on to attend conferences, congresses, or contacted leaders in a field adjacent to yours to help you learn. How do you grow, and how does that curiosity help you grow? I also think about the Harvard philosophy about keeping the theoretical light and focusing more on real world examples. And that's why the whole case-based philosophy exists and is ingrained in Harvard. So how have you learned from the streets, so to speak? How have you gone on and looked for ways to answer a problem when a textbook may not have been enough? that's the guidance I would give to individuals looking to answer this question.
It could also be, though, a community service kind of thing. You see a
Yeah.
problem in your community,
How
you
do you
start to
solve it?
research it, you take some responsibility in it in terms of solving the problem. And responsibility always grows a person. It's like you water somebody with responsibility, they're going to grow. And that's another possible approach to it. Or you get a hobby, you get curious about something, and you start, maybe, I don't know, astronomy, the stars in the sky. That might be a little harder to show impact, but maybe you can get really interested in clean tech as a result. Maybe you live in smoggy Los Angeles like me, and you get interested in how you're going to clean up the air. So there's lots of ways to show how your curiosity spurred growth and potentially, as I mentioned, an assumption of responsibility on some level.
Yeah, maybe a more concrete example that jumped to mind, Linda, as you were talking, as a former client of mine who was based in the Chicago suburbs. And a year or so ago, when there was some of this controversy sweeping the libraries, what books should be included, what books should be taken off the shelf, she suddenly found herself wanting to speak up and getting involved in her community. And politics aside, just she had to teach herself how to get involved in a more organized manner in her city council. And then before you know it, she was running for positions in city council. So that's the type of thing where Harvard would really enjoy learning from you.
Let me ask the group, HBS has always prized habits of leadership, community service, analytical aptitude, and appetite. Do you guys think these are being evaluated well in the new essays?
Those are the old criteria. The criteria changed. I think the habit of leadership is still there, to be sure. I don't think it's asking for analytical aptitude and appetite in the essays, but I'm not sure it asked for that in the previous essays. I think it's visible in the transcript and grades and the work you've done and all kinds of other places. Community engagement, I think it's implicit in the essays, yes, and the criteria, the new criteria.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, Linda, like one, and again, this is to the entire group, like one thing that came to mind was how can students differentiate themselves and stand out in these essays? Because these seem to be so tight, and some examples, and even stories. So what are some ways that they can stand out?
I would say stay focused. Know who you are before you start answering the questions. And so then try to make sure that each of the answers to these three questions are on theme and reinforcing the overall theme. Maybe you are an individual who is looking to make an impact in an Asian community because that's your background and you want to go into a family business. Okay, so how are you going to answer all three questions with that lens? And so that will help differentiate you over an applicant who's just all over the place. Because it's easy to lose track of that unifying theme if you get too caught in the weeds.
I actually would look, you don't want to be contradictory within the essays, but I'm not sure that I would agree that the essays need a unifying theme. We're all individuals. We're complex people. We have different interests, and we don't have a unifying theme to our lives. At least I don't, and I don't know too many people who do. So I think that the essays are opportunities to bring out the multidimensionality of the applicant. And I think that's actually more important and more distinctive than a unifying theme. I don't want to come down on you, Faisal. I really don't. But I do disagree there. So as I said at the beginning, I think when an applicant approaches an application, they have to look at the different elements and make sure that their individuality comes out in the sense that they're not a unified theme. They have different interests. They're going to have high points. They're going to have low points. They might have some quirky interests, and they might be very conventional in other ways. But I think that's part of helping the application reader to meet the applicant.
I have a one-word answer, and it's detail.
Oh, yeah. Much more succinct.
Bring up an interesting point, and I think that AI is actually kind of, it butts up against some of what you're talking about, because it's very hard to be unique with AI, right? It flattens what people are writing. But how do you think people are going to use it or not use it as a tool, and how are the schools responding? I know we're going to move on to other schools shortly and their questions, but we use, we can use AI as a tool. So how do you feel that, or how do you comment on AI at this point?
Yeah, I think schools are trying to figure out this role just as we are as well, but they're all smart. They know that this is going to happen, that AI is here to stay, and applicants are using it. Each school is different in its approach, and some are more open to you using AI, and others don't want you doing it at all. We were just on a call with Kellogg earlier, and they are open to having AI being used as long as you cite the use of AI. But that's not true of all the other schools. So my only guidance would be use it as a tool, right? That's all it is. Stay authentic, make sure it's your insights. You can use the AI to help with some of the creative process, but ultimately treat it like you would any other tool, like a calculator or a spreadsheet. You still need to make sure that your personality comes through.
Absolutely. Anyone else have
And
comments about
remember
AI?
that, and remember that if you use text from AI, those are going to be examples that are in its database, and you want to be the definitive, distinctive you.
I'd also add that you don't give authority to AI. I was recently writing a piece, had nothing to do with admissions, and I thought, let me let AI edit it. AI, it was terrible. It wasn't that I was introducing grammatical mistakes. No, grammatically it was fine. It was just very stilted and stuffy, far stuffier than I normally am, and and
You're not stuffy.
and I hated it. I just ignored it entirely. I posted the piece, and I got incredibly positive feedback on it. So don't look at AI as authoritative. As Faisal said, it's a tool. It's a tool very much in development also.
Mhm.
So, use it with caution. HBS, by the way, is very clear that does not want you to use it at all in its application.
Sure. Yeah, you're right. It's absolutely in development. It's like at the Casio stage. It's not a TI-82, right? If you want to compare it to a calculator.
It might be, what do they call it? The beta? I think this is gamma or delta. I mean,
All right.
But I think it's also not the place for it. You might want to play with it elsewhere, but not in your applications where you're being tested for your prowess and your ability to tell a story and your voice.
Absolutely. All right. We've been talking about Harvard a lot. I want to talk about a couple of other top schools, some M7s that are also on the list. And excuse me. If you want to, we can look at Stanford or Wharton. Does anyone have any preference where we start off?
How about looking for threads? What have people been seeing as common themes or types of changes that they see being made across the board?
I'll give a one-word answer this time: brevity.
Brevity, yeah.
In the question or in the word count?
The word count.
Just to point that out.
Good point. Good point. Good answer.
All right. I'm going to propose that we have a look at Stanford now. Didn't mean to draw Linda onto the thing. I'll do that, actually. Just comparing what we just saw over with Harvard to Stanford and Wharton. Who wants to take a stab at one of these in terms of feedback, comments, observations?
I think the big change with Stanford, if you call it big, is really just the word count, and that's what Linda was saying, brevity. So it's not massive. They've gone to 1,000 words, where I believe last year it was like 1050. So I'm curious as to how they chose the 1,000 word limit. Maybe it was just a nice round number, but it just makes it even more important that you get to the point quickly. And I'm intrigued by the fact that in their recommended word counts, where they've trimmed, I believe, is in the why Stanford, rather than the what matters most to you. They last year were recommending around the same number of words, I believe. So that is a signal. Stanford knows why you're applying to Stanford, they feel, but they really want to understand what matters most to you. So make sure you're allocating your time and effort accordingly.
Absolutely. Anyone else?
I would say that some of them, like Kellogg has changes and Columbia has changes, but others don't have too many changes other than like word count. Of course, that matters, but not in the questions per se.
All right, well, let's dip down to Kellogg then. So I'm going to put it larger on the screen so everyone can see. So put it out there to our three guests today. Who has some comments about Kellogg? What have they observed? What are their thoughts about the new essays here?
The first one reminds me of a parfait. So many layers out there to tackle.
Yeah, Kritika, I think you're onto something here. There's so many layers. They're asking this one question.
Sorry, I cut you off there, Faisal. Could you repeat what you said?
No, I was just saying that I agree with Kritika's analogy. There's so many layers to what Kellogg is asking for in that first essay. There's everything from your journey, talking about your specific goals, why this is the right time. So this is a little bit of everything that needs to go into this essay. The why you, why now, why MBA, why Kellogg. Whereas the second essay is a little bit more introspective. Here in the first essay, Kellogg wants to know answers to all the key questions. And you need to make sure that that's self-contained.
It's asking for the same structure, though. Your motivations right now, presumably what you came up against that you can't do or some problem you've got now, what your goal is, and how Kellogg is going to get you there. So it's a beginning, middle, and end structure.
True, but it's also asking what you plan to then after saying what you want to do in the future, it says, what do you hope to contribute to the Kellogg community? That could be at Kellogg or after you leave Kellogg. I don't think they're talking about, financial contributions. But again, I think your structure is just a very good way to approach the question. But it is a little bit of everything but the kitchen sink is in that question.
Yeah, they could have learned something about the soul of brevity. But I would say that even the moment that you brought up, Linda, belongs in the middle. The at Kellogg, why us, why our community, and asking how you plan to contribute is part of what you plan to get out of it. It's
Right.
the mirror image of the middle.
Yeah.
Should we move on to another school? Look at Booth.
Yeah, Booth has pretty much remained the same from last year.
Not so much change there.
Mm-hmm. The one thing I like about Booth is they have a minimum limit and not a maximum limit.
Yeah.
Right. Someone from the audience was asking us to discuss Wharton, so let's pop that up on the screen.
I think the first Wharton essay question, to a certain extent, is what you hope to get out of the Wharton experience, and the second Wharton essay question is what you hope to contribute, or what you hope to give.
This is where I feel most applicants get tripped up. The second one, what are you going to give? And it can't be superficial. I'll be a member of this club. I will help lead this event. You really need to think about how are you going to give back to Wharton, and this really forces you to make sure you know what Wharton stands for, where its strengths and weaknesses are, so you can address them. So this is a tricky one. It trips up a lot of people.
And I think the key lies in the word meaningful.
Specific is also important, but I agree with you.
Details, yeah.
All right, so Colombia had a change as well. Moving to Colombia, I should say that I liked their previous one, which said like what was your favorite song or book or something in the earlier years.
And there is a clear comparison with the undergraduate application that has for many years now asked about not your favorite book, but name the books you've read outside of school in the past year. Name the art exhibits you may have gone to, the theater productions you may have seen.
Mm-hmm.
It's also interesting, I think, with the second essay question. It's just reflective of the times and the current business environment we're in, where the 5 skills that they're asking you to describe, I know it's not on the screen, but it's all about mitigating bias and prejudice, intercultural dialogue, it's addressing inequity. There's a lot in there that can be really meaty, and an applicant has to think about how they've contributed to those areas. And it can be, it can be when you were a mentor to someone, it can be when someone mentored you. There's multiple ways to address it, but I find the essay 2 interesting one.
Just looking at the third one, how would you co-create your CBS MBA, your MBA experience at CBS? Please be specific, going back to Marlena's point about detail. Again, you really have to know how you intend to use your 2 years at Columbia, what you're going to take advantage of. Yes, maybe what you're going to contribute, but given your answer to number 1, the first question, there should be a logical follow through on number 3.
Pop over to one of the other schools. Let's see. Not looked.
I've got a quick question. Do any of these schools, does anyone know offhand, do they have any of the video essays or any of them?
I think Kellogg does.
Kellogg?
They do.
I believe so.
Mm-hmm.
Kellogg
Yes.
does, MIT, Sloan does.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I liked Linda's point before, which said that don't look at these essays separately, because you have to look at the whole application and also the other elements where you would have the ability to probably bring a facet that you couldn't before. And what I see common among some of these changes that are in these schools is that it allows for a more flexibility and also directionality, which I think helps current candidates, at least who are, and probably it's also reflective of the kind of roles that are coming up for applicants in these current times. It's also reflective of the changes that are happening in the job market too, with even like traditional industries like consulting and investment banking and other things undergoing sea changes. I feel that this is going to help them more.
All right, so
There's another.
Oh, go ahead, Marlena, please. Sorry.
I'd like to ask the rest of you something about the questions that ask about the MBA experience, both the what you're going to get and what you're going to give. It seems to me that that's a way for a school to find out if the candidate has any sense of what's going to happen while they are there. Perhaps others of you have had this experience, but when first asked about what is your goal, I've heard too many people say to get in, to get admitted is my goal. Yeah, and then what? And then, well, yeah, and then I'll have an MBA. And I thought, yeah, anything in the middle there? No, not much. I want that
Or
stamp.
after.
Yeah. And then asked, well, I see top of your list here is Harvard Business School. Why is that school top? Well, because it's Harvard. So I think that the term meaningful doesn't really belong anywhere in that sentence. And okay, after you've got the vanity license plate, then what?
Swag.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, there's your vanity license plate, but I think that might have something to do with why we see schools ask specifically about the experience part.
Yeah.
They're
Oh,
hoping you're going to grow and
definitely.
change.
Definitely.
Yeah. And
They
I
want
think
to know that you have a good reason for applying. I
Yeah.
didn't mean to cut you off, Faisal.
no, please finish.
They want to know that you've looked into it. I mean, we've all talked to people who say, "I want to apply to a top 10 school." That's
Yeah.
thoughtfulness. You might as well throw a dartboard at a U.S. News and World Report.
Right. No,
Dartboard.
and Linda, you took the words out of my mouth. There's so much more that a school is now asking you to explain to them. Like, it cannot be because of the brand or it's a top 10 school or an M7, and explain to the school meaningful. Marlena brought that up multiple times. What meaningful contribution are you going to make? Well, that you'll only know that if you've really thought through why you're applying to that school. And it has to go beyond rankings.
Yeah.
These schools spend an enormous amount of time, money, resources putting information out to inform the applicants about their programs. So, it's not hard to do that research. You don't even have to go anywhere.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, these schools know themselves. They want to know, do you know yourself as an applicant? And in fact, with ChatGPT, you don't even have to go to the individual websites anymore. You can just get it all in one spot.
But this is where I think people find out, oh, Kellogg doesn't have the Rustandi Center. Oh, it was Booth. And all the facts being messed up. But yeah.
And in
So,
line with what, sorry, with
go ahead,
what,
Marlena.
in line with what Linda said, an admissions committee member from a school which shall remain nameless asked me at a conference, well, he said, I just don't understand why anyone would need an admissions consultant. We put everything the candidate needs to know on our website. And I kind of felt sorry for him because obviously he doesn't meet people at the stage that we do, at the very beginning. And he's not in a position to encourage people to say, did you look at the part about this center, or did you even go to the website?
And they don't all know how to present themselves either.
Right.
There are many times, again, you have 350 words. How are you going to use them? 450 words. Well, tell a story. Well, yeah, they can tell a story, but can they tell it succinctly? Can they tell it coherently? They might need some feedback. What story should they use? The school doesn't tell them that.
Right. We just have a couple of minutes left. I wanted to give the opportunity to comment on MIT in case anybody had comments about that. It was the last slide we had for today. Someone's asking about Tuck. We unfortunately don't have a slide about Tuck, but next time we'll cover some other schools. Anyone have any comments about Sloan essay?
They still have the cover letter, don't they? Has MIT dropped the cover letter?
I think
don't
it did. Yeah.
They dropped it?
Mm-hmm. They
Yeah.
do have their video essays and
Right. Because they had that cover letter for decades.
oh, they do have a cover letter. Yeah, sorry. The other so this is like just an additional essay to the one. They do have the cover letter of 300 words still,
Right.
along with
Well,
two video essays.
This prompt is the clearest example of what Faisal brought up some time ago. It asks about a person's background.
Yeah, this is, I think, in my opinion, just reflective of the change that's happening in the admissions landscape, both at the undergraduate and graduate level, where without explicitly asking you for structural hurdles and inequities and challenges you've overcome, this is an opportunity for you to describe some of this so that the admissions teams can look at the complete picture and make a decision in light of all the new legal rulings that have been addressing and updating the admissions landscape in the United States.
So, and you all know that a lot of them apply to multiple of these M7s, if not like more than 3 or 4 of them. Do you feel that there's like a particular order in which they should attack these essays or applications?
One might be the dates, the due dates. It's very practically.
That would be the most logical, yeah.
Yeah.
I like, Linda, I have a slightly different approach. I like if my clients are applying to Stanford, I like to start with that because, and again, this year, they haven't changed much from previous years. The Stanford essays really force you to think about what matters. It's in the question. And then also the classic, why MBA, why now, what are your career goals? And so I tend to start with that first and then move into the other essays.
All right. So any parting advice to our applicants for round 1, which is hardly 10 weeks away?
Get started.
Yes, start today.
If you
Start
haven't
yesterday.
already. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, folks. That's all the time we have for today. I want to thank our featured guests, Linda, Marlena, and Faisal, for their wonderful insights. What we kept on hearing multiple times was ensure that you're able to showcase the meaningful contributions you've done in the past, and of course, the ones you want to do in the future when it comes to these applications. And please do look at it as a whole and bring every aspect of what you want and who you want to be in your applications. If you liked today's episode, please give us a little thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to MBA Waves to stay on top of all latest trends and news in the world of MBA business and education. Finally, don't forget to check us out next time, same time and place, and head on to mbawaves.com for the past episodes. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.